Let's talk about something you've never really thought about before. And let's take you back to step into a historic bank lobby. And the message is immediate, even though you don't even realize it consciously, just subconsciously. Even before a word is spoken, you're surrounded by massive marble counters, tall decorative columns, carefully chosen to signal that the bank is permanent and stable. The whole space feels quiet, right? It's solid, it's almost unshakable. It's built to make you believe your money is completely safe. At the back, a huge circular steel vault door sits on display. It's packed with complex locks that seem to guard everything inside. We're led to believe this metal protects cash from outside threats. But the reality is, the job is psychological. In fractional reserve banking, your dollar doesn't stay untouched in a vault. The moment you deposit it, the bank splits it up, turning it into multiple loans and circulating it through the economy, like a bet placed across a wide field. The physical cash leaves the building quickly, and yet the entire system survives on one quiet agreement that not everyone will ask for their money at the same time, because that would lead to a bank run, right? The stone walls and the steel doors exist for one reason above all else. They are there to keep that belief intact and to keep panic from ever starting. So in October 1907, that carefully built illusion of safety suddenly broke. Two brothers, Augustus and Otto Heinz, launched a quiet attempt to corner the stock of the United Copper Company. They bought aggressively, trying to squeeze out short sellers, but they misread the market, and the plan collapsed as the stock price crashed. The Heinzes weren't minor players either. They held powerful positions in multiple national banks and trust corporations. So, as news of their failed scheme spread, depositors began to connect the dots. Their savings were tied, however loosely, to the brothers' risky bets. And with that, the illusion cracked. Almost immediately, thousands of people poured into the streets, forming dense crowds outside the banks, all demanding their money at once. Because cash was handed out strictly in order of arrival, fear turned to urgency, urgency into chaos. If you arrived too late, that vault would be empty. And what began as a single failed stock scheme quickly spread into a nationwide financial panic. And in that moment, the system revealed its fragile truth. Banking runs not on cash alone, but on collective confidence. The panic struck hardest in the trust companies. These institutions acted like shadow banks in 1907, operating behind polished, customer friendly facades. They took in deposits just like regular banks, but they weren't held to the same strict regulations. That freedom allowed them to chase higher returns through highly leveraged, high risk investments with the depositor's money. So when a run hit the Knickerbocker Trust, the second largest trust in the country, framed by imposing Corinthian columns, it was forced to shut its doors. And with that closure, the entire financial system across the nation began to freeze up. The situation was terrifyingly unstable. There was no federal deposit insurance to protect people's savings, no central bank to step in with emergency cash and stop the collapse. The system needed a private rescue. J. Pierpont Morgan presented himself publicly as a disciplined, almost like moral figure, pious, charitable, patriotic. But behind closed doors, he was a hard edged power broker with enormous control over America's railroads and steel industry. Many critics saw him as the embodiment of unchecked financial power, just a monopolist who was his influence weighed heavily on the country. So, with government unable to act and the economy slipping further into crisis, the fate of the nation actually did narrow down at this point in time, the entire country, to just JP Morgan's judgment and self interest. On the night of November 2nd, Morgan called the frightened bank presidents to his lavish private library on Madison Avenue. Once they were all inside, Morgan quietly locked the doors. He slipped the key into his pocket, kind of just trapping all the bank leaders in there until they found a solution. Then he began a ruthless process of selection. After a quick review of Knickerbocker's financial books, he refused to save it, allowing the institution to collapse. At the same time, Morgan used the crisis to advance his own interests, shaping bailout decisions in ways that strengthened his empire. So while the system was being stabilized, his company, US Steel, moved aggressively to absorb major competitors. He even sent representatives to Teddy Roosevelt to help secure the president's approval for all this expansion with the argument that it was necessary to save the economy. So in effect, Morgan turned national crisis into leverage and stabilized the system while expanding his corporate power. Pretty interesting place to be. See, so he did ultimately stop the panic, but the public was left really shaken. One guy had effectively reorganized the American economy in real time, revealing just how enormous his power was. And the crisis made something really clear. The financial safety of millions of people could not depend on the decisions of a single unregulated individual. The government realized it needed to take control of the system's psychology itself. Safety couldn't just exist, it had to be permanently built into the structure to prevent future panic. That solution arrived in 1913, which is when we created the Federal Reserve. It was designed as a permanent lender of last resort, a government backed lender to replace the kind of unilateral, unchecked power that JP Morgan held on that day. And so we return to everyday bank lobbies and those heavy steel vault doors. Both the physical bank design and the Federal Reserve System serve the same deeper purpose. They're built to maintain one essential invisible force the system depends on entirely: your trust. Found this interesting? Want to dig deeper? I'm going to link to some really interesting reads and books below. Stay tuned. Catch you in the next video.